Namaste students, a very good morning. Today we will be starting with a new chapter, chapter 4, data file handling. So today's lecture, again this chapter we will be doing in parts. We cannot do it in one go obviously. So I have divided the chapter in parts. Now today's chapter or today's lecture you can say is totally about the concepts, building up of concepts, learning or understanding what are different types of files or what are different types of programs and what are different types of files, why are they used, and other things like this, right? So today there is no demonstration as such, no practical things included. It's all theoretical concepts which we need to understand and apply later. Okay, so today's objective is introduction to different types of programs, then need of using data files, then data file operations and types of files. Okay, so let us start with types of programs. Now, although we have worked with so many programs till now, but the programs are also categorized in different units. So there are, on the basis of their storage, or you can say their life, how long they exist. According to that, it is being divided in two. One is the transient, another is persistent. Now, what is the difference between these two? Now, transient. So these type of programs run for a short time and produce some output, but when they end, their data disappears. So when you run a program again, it starts with a clean because data entered at the runtime is executed inside the primary memory RAM, which is volatile in nature. We know that RAM is a volatile in nature. As soon as you switch off the computer, the memory also erased. So the same way, these programs, they have a very short lifespan. Till the time it is running, it is occupying the memory, the variables are holding the memory, and then keeping the records or data inside that variables. But as soon as the program will be closed, the data will also disappears. Okay, so the example we have till now, whatever Python programs we have created so far are example of transient programs. The input entered in the program are no more available as soon as program is switched off. For example, let's say I create a program in which I declare a variable called num, and I initialize the value of num with the value, let's say 20. Now in somewhere inside the program, I update its value 20 to 30. Now the moment I switch off that program, and if I try to access that value, and I again run that program, so my program will start again from x equal to 20 only, right? So, or sorry, num equals to 20 only. So that means the value which is being updated in due course of the program, that will not retain that value. So when the program will start again it will get that value will be initialized, right? Okay, now there are different other type of program is a persistent programs. Now these programs run for a long time or all the time, you can say, and keep at least some of their data in permanent storage, a hard drive for example, right? So when you run the program again, they execute from the same point. For example, operating system, which runs whenever a computer is switched on. So whenever we switch on the system, it automatically run and start the program. The same way, web server, which runs all the time and waiting for the request on the network. So these kind of programs, so when these programs start again, when the system starts again, so the operating system starts its value from which it has taken the last value. It is not starting from the beginning. Okay, now what are the requirement of files? Now the question comes, we understood two types of programs now, and by now we have also understand this thing that till now we were working with the transient type of programs. Now the question comes, we are been talking about file handling, data file handling, but what is the need of these files? So most computer programs work with files. This is because file help in storing information permanently, right? So if you see, whenever you use MS Word, so you are using a word file, which is storing your data, the text document. When you're using an Excel file, it is storing your numeric value or whatever kind of value you are storing in that. So a file is a document or a data written, that is a bunch of bytes you can say, on a permanent storage device, which can be read, written or rewritten according to the requirement, right? In other words, data is packaged up on the storage device as data structures called files. All files are assigned a name that is used for identification purpose by the operating system and the user. Right. So now we understand that files are being used because it helps us to store the data permanently on the secondary storage. That secondary storage could be a hard disk, could be a pen drive or anything, right? Now, data maintained inside the file is termed as persistent data. That is, it is permanent in nature. Every programming language offers some provision to use and create files through programs. So every programming language, that means a Python must also be having some provision wherein I can store my data for a longer purpose, for a permanent purpose. So Python allows us to read the data from and save the data to external text files permanently on secondary storage, right? So Python also allows us to do so. In Python, we can permanently store the program data also as Python scripts, that is py extension. Now this though we are already doing, that we are making the programs and we are saving that files as .py files, and whenever we run those files, whatever codes we have already written in the py file, we need not to write those code again. It will start working. But using that code, whatever variables we are creating and whatever values that variables are holding, that values are not permanent, right? That's why our programs are transient programs till now. Okay, so thus the file provides a means of communication between the program and the outside world, right? Now a file, or in short now, a gist of all this is a file or a data file is a stream or sequence of characters or data occupying named place on the disk where a sequence of related data is stored. Okay. Okay, now let us understand that what is the flow of data when we are using the files in Python. So if you will, look at the diagram 1. Now in diagram 1, whenever your Python program .py file we are using these py files, we can do it directly from the shell also. So it's not compulsorily that to write on or to read from the text files, we need to use the py files. No, we can do it directly from the shell also. So whatever way, whether we are using shell or we are using .py files, we can write to file. That means we can save the data on the external file, which is a data file in this case. In Python, we call them data files. And we can read from these data files also. That means read and write, both the operations can be done on the external file, that is your text files. Now diagram 2 says, you can see this smiley. So this is the user. So I have made the smiley because it's always happy as I am. So okay, so this is a user. So user, you can see whenever it is trying to access any file from the secondary storage, that text file which we have saved in the secondary storage. So whenever it is reading from that file or it is writing to that file in any kind of operations, that file need to be first opened in the RAM, that is random access memory. And that is why there are some specific function which I'm going to discuss in the next slide, which we need to conduct on the files, text data files, before we proceed for the different types of before we proceed using these files. Okay. So I again just quickly say it again. So the user, whenever is been writing to or reading from any of the operation it is doing on the text file which is saved on the hard disk, that file need to be open to the RAM, right? And the RAM, we do the operation, different whatever steps or whatever work we want to do in that file, and later we need to save it back to the hard disk. Okay. Now, this is what I was been just discussing in the previous slide, that data file operation. So before we start working with a file, first we need to open it. So after performing the desirable operation, it needs to be closed so that resources that are tied with the file are freed. So we need to open it. What does that mean? So we know, right, at present the file is saved in the secondary storage. So open it means we are calling a program call is there for opening up that file. That means that file will get open in the RAM, right? And then we perform the desirable operations on the file, which is at present is at the RAM. And before leaving, once we'll be done with all the operations, whatever we want to do on that file, we need to close it. That means we are shifting it back to the secondary storage. So the basic operations, so this is in order 1 2 3. That's why I have not make the bullets, but I have written 1 2 3 because this is a orderly sequence. So the basic operations used in Python file handling are as follow. Opening a file, this is the first thing we need to do. Then we perform the operations like read, write, or I will be discussing the other operations, whatever we can do on the data files also. So basically the processing of data, I want to say in short. So data processing on that file is to be done as a second step. And finally, we have to close the file so that that file can be shifted back to the secondary storage. Okay, now these are the different data file operations. So we can do it in the several way, such as creating a file, transversing a file for displaying data on screen, then appending data in the file, inserting data in a file, deleting data from a file, creating a copy of the file, and updating data in the file. Now, I don't think I need to explain these terms to you, what is the difference between appending, updating, creating, inserting, because we have already used these terms when we were doing, in the 11th grade when we were learning the list and we were learning the dictionaries. We have used all these terms there, and very well aware of the difference between these terms, right? What is the difference between appending and updating? You know it well. Okay, now out of the above, these are all the operations we can do. So out of the above, we will focus only on the operations which are part of our curriculum. So as per CBSE, we have to focus basically on these three different types of operations: reading, writing, and appending to the file. Now, we will be learning all three types of usage of all three types of files, which are mentioned in the CBSE curriculum. So let us first understand their meaning. So Python allowed to create and manage two types of files. One is the text file, another is the binary file. Beside these two types of file types, Python support another file type named CSV file. CSV file is comma separated value files. Now, the CSV file actually is not any different type of file type, but it is an example of text file only, right? So Abhi, when I will be explaining you in detail about the text file and binary file, then you will get to know that how CSV file is another example of text file. But then yes, how to handle the CSV files, how to generate the CSV files from the text file and all that, we definitely are going to learn practically also. Okay, so let's start with the text file first. So a text file consists of a sequence of lines. So you can say it's a file which is in the form which can be understood by the user. So a line is a sequence of characters, ASCII or Unicode, could be any, depending upon your default computer system's default way of interpreting it. So it's stored on a permanent storage media. Now, in a text file, each line is terminated by a special character, which is known as end of line, EOL. By default, this EOL character is a new line character, that is /n. We have learned that also. Now, text files are stored in human readable form. This is what I was discussing. So it is stored in a human readable form and can be created or edited using any text editor. Okay, so .py file which we used to create till now, that is again another example of text file. Okay, now the other type is a binary file. Now binary files are used to store binary data such as images, video files, audio files, etc. It contains information in the same format in which the information is held in the memory. That means the file content that is returned to the user is raw. So raw, I assume that you understand that memory understand it in the form of zeros and ones, right? So the file, this contains the information in the format of zeros and one. Numeric data is there, and that is why it is said that it is returned to the user in raw format. In this file type, there is no delimiter, right? No delimiter means you can say also like no character translations can be carried out in a binary file. Why? Because it is already in its raw form. It's in the form of numeric 0 and 1. So definitely there is no requirement of translation also, because it's already in the machine under machine language. As a result, binary files are easier and much faster than text files for carrying out reading and writing operations on data, right? So that's why it is faster. As long as the file doesn't need to be read by people or need to be ported to a different type of system, it is the best way to store program information. Because if there is a need to be read by the people, then definitely the numeric data which is stored in the binary files, it is not possible for the user to read it, right? So it's not a human readable format. Okay. Now, how will you differentiate between the file types? So we can usually tell if a file is a binary file or a text-based file on its file extensions. So this is because by convention, the extension reflects the file format, and it is ultimately the file format that dictates whether the file data is a binary or a text. So, by observing the extension of the file, we can categorize those files as binary files or text files. Now, the common extension, let me start with the text file first. So the common extension that are text file formats is HTML files, CSS files. Then you can see it's CPY, as I mentioned you, and then Java file, PHP file, and then TXT. When we open the notepad, so by default that extension is TXT file. So TXT file, then RTF, rich text format, if I don't know if you know about this format again or not, and then a CSV file. So you can see here that whenever the data is in the tabular form, like Excel files or DBMS files, which used to store the data in a tabular form. So when that kind of data is to be stored or to be transferred, so then the CSV files are being used. It's an example of CSV file is an example of text file format only. Okay, now move on to the binary file format. So what kind of files are being saved in the binary file format? So all the images related file, like JPG, PNG, BMP. BMP is a paintbrush file. Then MP4 video file, or MP3 audio file, or your PDF, which PPTs. So all these are exe files. So all these are the example of binary file format, and that is why most of the time exe files are being generated whenever you download something. At last it used to give you. So at last it gives you the okay, I'm sorry. So there was some disturbance between the video. Okay, so we were been discussing that, exe file executable files are generally, whenever you download any program or any software, you usually get the exe file. So you run the exe file because it directly runs. It does not need the conversion. It is in the machine code only. Okay. Now comes to the CSV comma separated value files. So CSV files is a type of text file format used to store tabular data such as spreadsheet or a database files data. So a CSV file stores tabular data, numbers and text in a plain text. Each line of the file is a data record. Each record consists of one or more fields separated by commas. Now the use of the comma as a field separator is a source of the name of this file format. That is why it is called comma separated values, because each field is being separated with the help of a comma. Now for working CSV files in Python, there is an inbuilt module called CSV module. So it's a ready-made module which comes with Python. The CSV module gives the Python programmer the ability to parse CSV files. So, we will be able to convert our TXT file to a CSV file using these modules, and we will be learning the operations whatever is being recommended by CBSE, to include in this unit. We will be learning all that CSV related module.